Hello everyone, and you're watching Bitcoin Bubble news channel. Using heat is the next big thing. For Bitcoin mining, electricity was used and that energy was turned into heat. That's pretty much what it does. That's what we do with things like home heaters, we pay for them. When you mine Bitcoin, the heat is usually a bad thing. You have no idea how to deal with the heat. Now, if you can find a use for the heat, a New York hot tub place uses Bitcoin miners to heat their tubs. Yeah, I talked about some African ones. There are the old dry tea leaves, which need to be dried pretty quickly. They will dry them with the heat that Bitcoin miners make. It looks like Marathon is now one of the world's biggest mines. Heat recovery is now being looked at very seriously. Over time, Bitcoin mining not only uses a lot of energy, but to be the best at it, and it's a very competitive field, you have to find a way to make money from your heat. In this new talk with Lyn Alden about macrosportic, we learn about Bitcoin mining and the many ways that energy and heat can be used around the world. Lyn talks about the creative ways Bitcoin miners are using energy, such as using natural gas that has been left out in the open or collecting waste heat for use in greenhouses. Lyn stresses that Bitcoin mining is making the energy sector more efficient, especially in places that make too much energy or don't have enough standard infrastructure. Please remember to like, follow, share, and talk about this channel before we start. Let's hear more from Lyn Alden now. One thing Bitcoin miners can do is put Bitcoin miners on site. Then they can run that natural gas through a generator to power the Bitcoin miners and at least get a couple of kilowatts of extra power for free. This is better than burning the gas because it turns the methane into carbon dioxide. So it has less of an effect on warming gases. It makes you money. Still, the World Bank says that the amount of natural gas released around the world every year is about 8 times the amount of energy Bitcoin uses. That's it. And Bitcoin does something different from a data center. It can handle slow speeds and low availability. It can go to faraway places and be wherever there is energy. This means that it can be used in different ways. Most of the money that goes into Bitcoin mining goes to power. Of course, there are some costs for hardware and people, but by far the biggest one is energy. They can go to any area and say, hey, we just want your cheapest electricity price. We'll let you know if you need to turn off every day for 2 hours. Or you need to turn off whenever there is a sudden rise in demand or a drop in supply. For example, we'll be the first ones to turn off because we can if we price in the cheapest electricity when it's available. In a nutshell, it fixes all the little holes and flaws in the system. Of course, sometimes there are too many Bitcoin miners in one place at the same time, and people say, oh, look, all these Bitcoin miners. On the other hand, those who live in places where energy is scarce are less competitive with their peers because their costs go up. So Bitcoin miners will spread out, and they already have to all the little spots around where there's extra power. Blockchain is a paying customer, even if no one else is, as long as your energy is cheap enough. And trapped energy is the cheapest thing there is. Instead of building a dam, they can use it to mine Bitcoin. As more people in the area use the energy, they may be able to charge less than the Bitcoin miners and get a bigger share of the money. That's what we see. So there are towns in Africa that didn't have power before, but now they do thanks to a new hydro setup for Bitcoin mining. That is a real event taking place on the ground. It's been amazing to see. For example, in 2020, Stone Ridge put out an investment newsletter that was written by their CEO, Ross Stevens. Besides that, he talked about how he thinks Bitcoin mining will change the way energy is used in the future. In fact, he said that African water would be the best place for it. He says things like, imagine rivers in Africa that take all this unused energy and turn it into electricity for these people. That wasn't really happening yet at the time. But you know what? 2 or 3 years later, Gridless is still doing it and doing it on a bigger scale. There are also other businesses that do the same thing. At the time, he also said people now settle along rivers, along the coast, and along pretty much all long transportation networks, and we bring the energy to us. We've always done it that way. We get the oil and bring it back to us. We get any kind of power source and bring it back to the office. Bitcoin mining, on the other hand, lets you go where the power is, which is great for things like working from home. That is, if it makes people want to move to this river, this place, or this geothermal area. And, during the American gold rush, people would find gold and then a town would grow. Someone has to take care of all those miners who need haircuts, restaurants, and other services. The same thing can happen when you mine Bitcoin. These little groups start to form, and people can move towards places where there is natural energy that can be used, and someone needs to take care of the people who run it. Those people need to be served by someone. You also have access to power and can build a small town. I believe Bitcoin basically just fixes all the problems, and it only takes a few cycles to do so. And every time the price of Bitcoin drops, it forces out all the miners whose power costs are too high. In the long run, it only makes economic sense to use strain and energy, putting something to dry or heat it up. I think that will happen more and more. In fact, there is a company in France that is fighting with heat pumps to use Bitcoin miners to heat homes. That's strong. I was talking to someone from the company about this, and he said something funny. It costs more to heat French homes than the Bitcoin network. A lot of people think that the Bitcoin network is big, but it's still pretty small in the big picture. And all of these little ways to save energy can just slip in there, along with ways to use energy that is being lost. As we just heard, Lyn Alden talked about how Bitcoin affects infrastructure and energy markets. Let's hear what she has to say about Bitcoin's place in the banking system as a whole. Lyn talks about how Bitcoin is a unique form of money that can be used instead of standard currencies because it is not controlled by a single group. She talks about how it could be used to protect against inflation and how it is becoming more popular in countries where the economy is unstable. Lyn also talks about Bitcoin's effects on world politics, such as how it can be used in foreign transactions and how it might challenge the US dollar's dominance. Let's hear what Lyn Alden has to say about Bitcoin's future on the MacroSpot show. Okay. So to sum up, Bitcoin is money that can be sent anywhere in the world, can't be hacked, and keeps its own value. You can at least take care of it yourself. And even when you look at other coins, this one is the biggest, most liquid, and safest. If you want to send $1 billion to someone else's country, Bitcoin is the money that can handle it. Then there are the network effects that come with that. It gets safer as it gets bigger, more liquid, and more valuable, which makes people want to own it even more. For this reason, price is a key sign of acceptance. It doesn't matter what happens in a year, 2 years, or 3 years, over, say, 4 years, you want to see higher highs and higher lows in Bitcoin. That shows that people are starting to use it. And yes, volatility is important because you want an object to go up in value when it is small. As you know, you can't go from A to B. Bitcoin is worth about $1 trillion right now. From nothing to $1 trillion in about 12 years. When it got to $1 trillion, it was in a bear market. It's now back to $1 trillion. Not having potential volatility will not let you get that. And when prices go up, people tend to borrow money and get too excited for a while. And that's what causes times of falling prices. It can't reach whatever its total market is in either way of volatility. Now that Bitcoin is getting closer to its total potential market, what percentage of your liquid net worth